Good afternoon. It's my privilege to call this hearing to order. I thank my colleagues for joining us today. We will be considering the nomination of Mr. Brian Quintenz to be Chairman of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. Mr. Quintenz, congratulations on your nomination. We appreciate your willingness to serve. And I also throw in your family's willingness to let you serve. These are certainly family affairs. The CFTC is the only federal financial regulator that oversees agriculture and energy risk management markets, and the resiliency of the derivative markets are critical to our commodity supply chains. Well-regulated and efficient commodity markets help our producers manage risk. As our farmers face elevated input costs, interest rate uncertainty, price volatility, natural disasters, futures markets help producers protect themselves. Over the years, the CFTC's pragmatic, principles-based approach has resulted in a workable regulatory framework for markets to function efficiently. The CFTC has historically engaged in constructive dialogue with regulated entities and market participants, and this has built trust and confidence in the CFTC. This constructive, flexible regulatory approach, combined with diligent policing of the cash and derivative commodity markets, has resulted in the U.S. derivatives markets being the envy of the world. It's my expectation that the commissioners entrusted with leading the agency will continue these practices that have served our country so well. At the same point, the role of the CFTC may expand as Congress, including this committee, considers granting the CFTC authority to regulate the spot digital commodity markets. Additionally, new markets and products such as prediction markets and crypto-based derivatives have been developed, which will require the Commission's attention. As I've said before, the CFTC is the right agency to regulate spot digital commodity trading. The CFTC, and only the CFTC, should regulate the trading of digital commodities. It's because only the CFTC understands the unique characteristics of commodities and commodity-based contracts. The market knowledge, combined with its flexible, constructive regulatory approach, is why it's the right regulator for spot digital commodity markets. I look forward to hearing from Mr. Quintenz on these issues. Again, congratulations on your nomination. And I now turn to Senator Klobuchar.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I know we'll be joined by several other members. There are already a number here. Thank you, Mr. Quintenz, for being with us today. And I'd also like to welcome your family, including your parents, Ken and Susan. I see them over there. And they seem proud of you. I don't know, just so you know. Your kids, Connor and Vivian, as well as Jenna. So thank you all for being here. The Commodity Future Trading Commission plays a vital role in ensuring the integrity of our financial and agriculture markets. That includes protecting market participants from fraud and manipulation, maintaining orderly derivative markets, and enabling farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, and small businesses to hedge against risk. We meet at a pivotal moment for the CFTC as it faces a rapidly changing landscape across both derivatives and spot markets. The agency is being called on to address not only the emergence of novel financial products and technologies, but also broader shifts in market structure, including the growing influence of non-traditional platforms, as well as changes to established platforms. These developments raise important issues and important questions about the scope of the CFTC's oversight and its ability to respond quickly and effectively to risk in complex and fast-moving markets. To tackle these challenges head-on, I believe it is in the public interest that the CFTC have not only a confirmed chairman, but also a fully functioning commission with the bipartisan balance and independent structure that Congress intended. I can't think of a more important time that we make sure that happens. It is also essential that the CFTC have the institutional capacity, both in staffing and resources, to fulfill its mandate in the face of these emerging challenges. That means protecting retail investors and other market participants, as I noted, from fraud and abuse, guarding against systemic risk, and ensuring transparent, competitive markets. At the same time, the CFTC must foster a regulatory environment that encourages responsible innovation and adapts to new technologies without compromising its core responsibilities. Mr. Quintenz, you bring valuable experience to this nomination. You served as CFTC Commissioner from 2017 to 2021, helping to steer the agency through major market stress, including the WTI crude oil collapse and the early pandemic volatility. You also led the agency's Technology Advisory Committee and worked on policy issues at the intersection of fintech and market regulation. You also have private sector experience and, of course, will be interested in recusal issues for things that may be coming before the Commission. The next chair faces a full agenda, from disintermediation and digital asset oversight to improving transparency in Treasury futures and protecting retail customers in the wake of recent failures. You and I have discussed several priorities directly tied to the CFTC's core mission: safeguarding rural co-ops and end users, strengthening coordination with other regulators, and modernizing surveillance tools to better direct market abuse before it harms consumers. I look forward to hearing more from you about how you plan to pursue these policy goals. Thank you again for being here, and we look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
It gives me great pleasure today to introduce President's nominee to serve as Chairman of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, Mr. Brian Quintenz. I'd like to welcome his family, who has joined us today, his parents, Ken and Susan, children, Connor and Vivian, and partner, Jenna. We are delighted to have you all with us today. Mr. Quintenz brings considerable experience and understanding to the CFTC that will serve him well as chairman. During the first Trump administration, Mr. Quintenz served as commissioner at the CFTC after being unanimously confirmed by the Senate in 2017. Mr. Quintenz has worked in the financial markets and served as a thought leader on emerging markets and innovative technology regulatory issues, and began his career as policy advisor for Congresswoman Deborah Price. Mr. Quintenz is a graduate of Duke University and received his Master's of Business Administration from Georgetown University. Again, thank you for being here. I now should administer the oath, and then you will be able to begin your testimony, where you will have 5 minutes. So please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statement you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Do you agree that if confirmed, you will respond to requests to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of the Senate?
I will.
Thank you, and you're now recognized for your statement.
Thank you, Chairman Bozeman. Thank you, Ranking Member Klobuchar and members of this committee. It is a true honor and privilege to be before you today as President Trump's nominee to chair the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, an agency that is near and dear to my heart. I'd first like to recognize my family, my parents, Ken and Susan, my children, Connor and Vivian, my niece, Claire, and my girlfriend, Jenna, as well as many friends and colleagues who are here with me today. I'd like to dedicate my testimony to my late twin brother, Darren, and my friend, Mike Gill, who served at the agency with me. I'm deeply grateful to the President for the trust he has placed in me to lead an agency that is vital and critical to ensuring the resiliency and vibrancy of the United States economy. As a nation, I believe we are at the precipice of a golden age for innovation, for our derivatives markets, and for the CFTC itself. This could prove to be the most exciting time in the agency's history, as well as its most important. If I have the honor of being confirmed, I look forward to working with the members of this committee and your staffs, members of the House Agriculture Committee, market participants and stakeholders, especially in the agricultural space, to ensure that CFTC-regulated markets remain the most innovative, liquid, and resilient hedging and price discovery markets on the planet. This is the third time I've had the privilege of appearing before this committee as a nominee. The first two were for my original appointment as a CFTC commissioner, and on both prior occasions, I was honored to receive unanimous approval from this committee, and ultimately to have been unanimously confirmed by the full Senate in 2017. When I was last before this committee, I pledged to visit farmers and ranchers, producers and growers at their farms and places of business. When I was a commissioner, I traveled to over a dozen states across the country, including to Arkansas and Minnesota, to hear about our agriculture industry's use of, access to, and concerns with derivatives markets. I again pledged, should I have the honor of being confirmed, to continue to visit farmers and ranchers across the country, as well as adopt the longstanding practice of the CFTC chair sponsoring the Agriculture Advisory Committee. I'm proud of the record that I established as a commissioner, where I focused on three main objectives: risk, innovation, and harmonization. Should I have the honor of being confirmed to lead the CFTC, I pledge to continue the agency's strong focus on risk innovation, as well as reciprocity with foreign jurisdictions. Further, I will have no tolerance for bad actors who defraud, manipulate, or cheat in the CFTC's markets. Customer protection has always been a key attribute of well-regulated markets. The CFTC is a systemic risk regulator and oversees perhaps the world's most systemically important financial entities, derivatives clearinghouses. First and foremost, the agency must remain laser-focused on meeting its systemic regulatory mandate. In my experience, the CFTC is both the world's most innovative financial regulator as well as its most technologically advanced. This is because of the Commodity Exchange Act, which is by far the world's most innovation-focused statute. The CEA's principles-based approach to regulation and self-certification framework has created a marketplace that continues to thrive with integrity, while providing individual small businesses and large firms with new hedging tools to better manage their financial, commercial, and economic risk. Most recently, I served as the global head of policy for A16Z Crypto, the crypto funds of venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz. This experience has provided me with three invaluable insights to bring to bear should I have the honor of being confirmed. First, I've traveled the world meeting with other jurisdictions' regulators and government officials, where I learned what they have attempted to do, what they have left to do, what has worked well or poorly in creating regulatory frameworks for crypto assets and intermediaries. Second, I've had a direct line of sight into the future of this technology and how it could transform our lives. I view blockchain as a horizontal technology that has the potential to touch every aspect of society, not just as a vertical technology purely focused on financial services. Lastly, I have strong conviction that the surest way to undermine U.S. global leadership in blockchain technology is to let bad actors and fraudsters proliferate. I began my career here on Capitol Hill, working as a legislative aide in the House of Representatives for 6.5 years. I have a deep respect for Congress. Should I have the honor of being confirmed, I will seek to be a trusted partner to you in your oversight responsibilities so that the U.S. derivatives markets remain the best in the world. Thank you for your consideration of my nomination. I look forward to answering your questions.
All right, thank you. Senator Boozman is going to be off to a meeting soon, so I'm starting. Okay. The fast-paced innovation in the crypto space has led to an ever-growing number of retail investors and consumers using crypto. We all know that. While it is important to encourage innovation, I want to make sure crypto oversight is robust so people are protected. Mr. Quintenz, what specific regulatory tools or approaches would you use to ensure that innovation in cryptocurrency does not come at the expense of basic safeguards and customer protections for the public?
Thank you, Ranking Member. First, let me say I appreciate the time that we spent in your office and recalling my trips to Minnesota, and would pledge to continue to do that. I really enjoyed myself there. Your question's a very important one. Obviously, the mission of the agency is critical. The agency oversees markets that touch every segment of society and the economy, from the energy sector to the agricultural sector to the financial services sector. We cannot take our eye off the ball there. Should the agency receive new oversight responsibilities through Congress, I believe that the agency can take a technology-first approach to that oversight, where we can look to ensure that the most up-to-date technologies are used so that we can spend taxpayer dollars efficiently and effectively. And any new additional headcount that the agency decides to commit to that oversight is a 10x employee compared to what they otherwise would be without that technology. As I said, this is the most technologically advanced regulator on the planet for its traditional remit, and there's no reason it can't be the same for
So do you
crypto.
think you would need additional funding and staff to write rules that would come out of any legislation?
I think it would be a challenge.
Not to mention oversight.
It would be a challenge to undertake a lot of that responsibility. Certainly the oversight part, once rules come online. I think that the rule writing groups within the agency are smaller, but once rules come online, then there is new authority there is new jurisdiction, and it's usually been a precedent to accord the agency new resources.
There's been a growing interest in expanding derivatives market trading hours, 24/7 potentially. The CFTC put out a request for comment. What's your view on how the CFTC should approach this shift? Do you believe you will need to revise its rules to accommodate these developments?
Thank you, Senator. It's another very important and fascinating question. I think what we have seen globally through technology is the advent of 24/7 trading using a technological process that doesn't exist in the traditional regulated derivatives markets. And so as the agency is looking to try to allow for that same kind of trading within its existing rule structure, there are different kinds of concerns that need to be addressed, such
Well,
as...
like, for instance, price dislocation, especially in lower volume markets like ag markets. A lot of us are concerned on that front.
Sure, of course. The agricultural contracts have unique trading hours, different trading hours. They have different trading hours between them. I think, for instance, the corn contracts trade more frequently, whereas other contracts trade along more traditional hours. I think the agency would want to ensure that we take the view of all stakeholders into account, that we listen to the people that use these markets, that the views of risk managers and hedgers, especially in the agricultural space, are paramount before we try to allow for or copy innovation and then have it bleed through the system.
Okay, thanks. I had some retail customer questions that are important. I'll wait for at the end, or maybe my colleagues will ask them. But two remaining questions. One's on recusals, conflicts, but the first is on, given the CFTC was structured by Congress as an independent commission, do you think it's appropriate for the OMB director vote to play a central role in reviewing the agencies and your performance and shaping spending decisions and policy agenda? How does OMB's role relate to the commission?
Thank you, Senator. I would commit that the agency will follow all executive orders, and we will comply with those. I do believe that it is important that the agency conduct robust cost-benefit analysis and have the partnership with other agencies, including OIRA and OMB, involved in that process, and I would commit to that. But ultimately, should I have the honor of being confirmed, I have a strong allegiance to and adherence to the statute. I care deeply about the mission of this agency, and that is what I'm going to tie my chairmanship to.
Okay. You are currently the head of policy for A16Z Crypto, a venture capital firm investing in crypto companies, and you're also on the board of directors for CalSheX, a first-of-its-kind exchange that allows trading of event contracts. Cryptos like to be a major, as you know, to be a major subject of rulemaking, as we've discussed, and A16Z, or one of its portfolio companies, could be the subject of enforcement investigations. The CFTC just ended its litigation with CalShe, but events contracts are also likely to be an issue before the commission. You've pledged to resign from these roles, divest your financial interests, and recuse yourself from related matters for 1 or 2 years. Please explain how you'll carry out your divestitures in the timeframes you agreed to, number one, and then two, even if you recuse yourself and divest, there will remain a potential appearance of a conflict. How will you navigate these conflicts?
Thank you, Senator. If I could just first say that when I was a commissioner previously, I held myself to the highest standards of ethics and integrity. My reputation is critically important to me. I don't think I would have had the opportunity in the private sector following my time at the agency if that was not the case. I will abide by all applicable ethics statutes and regulations. I have a very robust ethics agreement that does require my divestiture. I will have a screener in my office to ensure that no matter inappropriately comes before me. There are a number of approved methods for divesting to ensure that I can meet the timelines, and I'm prepared to explore all avenues to do that.
Thank you. Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Ranking Member, and thank you for being here and coming and visiting with me in the office, and also your willingness to serve another time. I think that is a great thing, given that you've got that, not only all your private world experience, education, all that, but you actually have on-the-job experience as well that you bring. I think that's good. Our farmers don't control weather, prices, or markets, so risk management's a huge thing to them, something you and I talked about a little bit already. So how we help them manage risk is of paramount importance to this Ag Committee, and certainly to me, coming from an Ag state, which is why we're so committed to a countercyclical safety net, as well as enhanced crop insurance, because those are risk management tools that make sense for our farmers and ranchers. So talk to me about how you will engage with farmers and ranchers to make sure that, that they're able to use CFTC and hedging products to further manage the incredible risks they face.
Thank you, Senator. I also enjoyed my conversation with you. Thank you for making time to visit with me and discuss my trips around the country, including to your state, and meeting with agricultural producers and end users. In those travels, I heard often from the agricultural community that the risk management derivatives markets are a critical component of their hedging portfolio, a tool in the toolbox, but it's certainly not the only one, and the others they rely on are the ones you mentioned, the countercyclical programs and the crop insurance programs. There is an interesting tie between the crop insurance programs and our futures markets. I believe that they are, the crop insurance programs are priced, in the spring and in the fall, and they base those prices on the futures market. So if the agency isn't doing its job, and futures markets for those products are not accurately reflecting supply and demand, then we have two of those tools that aren't appropriately serving farmers and ranchers and needs. So I would pledge to you to ensure that the agency focuses on its true mission, that the products that are listed that they use have integrity. And again, I would pledge to sponsor the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which is a critical source of feedback from the agricultural community around the CFTC's rules. I attended every prior session that the Agriculture Advisory Committee held when I was a commissioner, including traveling for ones that we did outside of Washington, which I've always viewed as a very important thing.
Having served in this role once before, what are the most important things you learned last time, and what are your priorities this time? What are you going to do to really make a difference this second time around? What do you want to accomplish here?
Thank you, Senator. I think what I learned last time, I learned a lot last time, but I would try to boil it down into, number one, the agency has wonderful people. They are dedicated to the mission of the statute and to the markets. It is a small but mighty regulator. It has 650 people and oversees a $350 trillion derivatives markets and does it very, very well. And perhaps, in my view, no one regulates markets better than the CFTC. And one of the reasons it can do that so well is because, as I said, it is a technology-first regulator, and it has the most advanced technology of any regulator that I have seen. The agency is able to get real-time customer-level data from clearinghouses so that they can immediately understand sensitive periods of the market and stress, and reach out to customers and intermediaries to understand whether or not there is stress in the market that they have to oversee. So I developed a big respect for the agency, its mission, and its function, and in meeting that mission and the statutory mandates. What I would like to do is first of all, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Make sure that we continue that critical oversight over systemically important clearinghouses, make sure that we continue to allow for innovation in the marketplace, make sure that we continue to ensure that the core principles of the CEA are being applied through both DCMs, the exchanges, and the clearinghouses, so that the new innovation that meets the market isn't inhibited by the agency, but that we can ensure that those new markets do have integrity.
Biggest challenge coming at us, biggest thing that we're going to have to deal with that's new on the horizon, biggest single challenge.
Well, I think it's, the things that we can expect and things we don't know about. Obviously, the things we don't know about are the biggest challenges. And when I was at the CFTC previously, I don't think anyone really saw the impact of the COVID pandemic coming, but there was a period in March of 2021 or of 2020 where the markets experienced significant stress. In my view, the derivatives markets handled that with flying colors. I don't want to minimize how difficult it was for people in the markets and in the intermediaries and at the exchanges, but the derivatives markets performed very admirably. I think what we can expect as a challenge is new oversight from Congress potentially, making sure that we are prepared for that, making sure that we take a technology-first approach, and that we hit the ground running if Congress decides to give the agency that authority.
Thank you. Again, appreciate you being here and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member, and welcome, Mr. Quintenz, to you and your family. When Congress established the Commodities Future and Trading Commission, it designed the agency to be governed by a bipartisan panel. You highlighted the strength of the Commodity Exchange Act in your testimony, so I want to just hone in on this a little bit. The provision in the Commodity Exchange Act says that, quote, not more than 3 members of the commission shall be members of the same political party, and presidents have fulfilled this Congress's intent by consulting with the opposite party to maintain that balance when they're filling vacancies. I believe you were first nominated to be a commissioner by President Obama, if that's correct, and President Trump nominated 2 Democrats, and President Biden did the same thing in nominating a Republican. And as you know, there are currently 3 vacancies on the CFTC, and 2 other commissioners have announced their intentions to leave. So my question is, do you support maintaining the bipartisanship of the CFTC?
Thank you very much, Senator. I can speak to when I was there. And when I was there and the people with whom I served, I had a very, very close working relationship with them. I deeply respect the commissioners and both of the chairs with whom I served. We had a very deliberative dialogue. We exchanged views consistently. A lot of times we disagreed. Sometimes we did agree. And sometimes I agreed with my Democrat colleagues on issues that the chair was doing or against what the chair was doing, and that was on both administrations. And
Yep,
so,
that's the way it should be, probably.
and so I did value that experience, but I would pledge to you that, and I think the other thing that's important for me to say is that when I joined the agency, it only had 2 confirmed positions there, a chair and a commissioner. And when I left the agency, it ended with a chair and 1 commissioner. And I would pledge to you that if I have the honor of being confirmed, no matter what the makeup is, I will try to replicate the experience that I had with who is there. And I will ensure that the agency meets its statutory mission.
Thank you for that. And that is not exactly what I asked. My question is whether you support maintaining that bipartisanship of the CFTC. I think that's very important. And, you know, the Ag Committee here operates frequently on a very bipartisan basis. The issues that affect, the issues that we work on are often not so partisan. Sometimes we have regional differences. But so my question again is, would you urge the president to nominate, to follow in the longstanding tradition of nominating commissioners to maintain that bipartisan balance that is the intent of Congress as laid out in the Commodity Exchange Act?
Thank you, Senator. The president is the head of the executive, and the president will make his own decisions with the advice and consent of Congress. But I would pledge to you that I will work with whoever is at the commission and keep the bipartisan spirit of the agency alive.
Okay. Not It's disappointing. Let me ask you about something else. Consolidation in the ag sector can be a real problem for farmers as they try to get fair prices and make a good living. For seeds and chemicals, mergers between the largest players over the past decade have resulted in just 3 entities controlling 80% of the U.S. corn seed market and 70% of the international pesticide market. In cattle markets, our committee has worked a lot on this. Producers are sometimes making pennies on the dollar due to lack of packer transparency and competition, and meanwhile, consumers are paying more and more for beef at the grocery store, while big processors, which control about 85% of the market, see soaring profits. Now, the CFTC plays a role in commodity price discovery as part of its mission. And could you talk to me a bit about how you see this role? The CFTC obviously doesn't have federal oversight over mergers or antitrust issues, yet it seems clear that ag concentration is a problem that affects our markets. Is there a role for the CFTC here to play, helping producers get a fair market value for their products?
Thank you, Senator. I think that there's a role for the CFTC to play, ensuring that the futures markets and the prices and the transactions have integrity and represent supply and demand, and that they are free from corners and squeezes, which are a requirement in the Act, which I think goes to your point around consolidation and
fair market.
possibly market presence and activity there. And there are position limit rules that when I was a commissioner before, we implemented for the first time in new commodities to ensure that those markets had integrity and had the same kind of protections from a position limit perspective as other commodities. And I will pledge to you to ensure that we focus our attention on fair, orderly markets so that, again, the prices in the futures markets reflect supply and demand for the use by the end user community.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Tuberville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Quintenz, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Senator.
Good to see you and your family. Thanks for willingness to serve. You know, for the last 4 years, the Biden administration led an attack on cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It was obvious to all of us. I think you know that better than anybody. One of the ways they did this was by attacking leaders in the digital asset industry like yourself. I'm glad to see that today we live in a new world with the most pro-crypto president and administration that we have seen. I'm eager to see you lead the CFTC as we enter the golden age of American innovation and prosperity, and I look forward to supporting your nomination. When you came by my office prior to this hearing, we discussed how you were debanked because of your leadership and stance on digital assets. For years, my Democrat colleagues said that this was not happening. Obviously, it was. You were even sent a letter informing you that you were being debanked. Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask for unanimous consent that the letter dated July the 7th, 2023, from UBS to Mr. Quintenz be entered into the record. Thank you. Mr. Quintenz, would you like to discuss this letter and the broader Biden administration attack on crypto?
Thank you very much, Senator. I was very disappointed to receive that. First of all, I'd like to say that the relationship manager, financial advisor mentioned in that letter is a trusted family friend, and I don't hold this against him at all. I think the only reason why this would happen is because of pressure from the regulators to debank a disfavored industry. And you know, these were accounts that were set up for my children to receive $100 worth of stock from their grandparents for Christmas. So I don't want to also overemphasize the pain that it caused me, but I think it is endemic of what happened during the last administration that I do not think represented American values. And I know from personal experience that there were investments that our firm was trying to make into small teams, and our firm couldn't even send them a check because they couldn't open a bank account because they were in the crypto industry. I believe legal businesses deserve access to legal services, and I'm glad that is starting to change.
Thank you. Probably a pretty tough time, and I understand what you're going through. We're all curious about the growth of prediction markets. Can you talk about the benefits of the markets and how various businesses and industries can use them for risk management when they otherwise may not have access to appropriate hedging tools?
Thank you, Senator. When I was at the commission, I read the law, and the law was clear that the Commodity Exchange Act recognizes that an event that poses financial, commercial, or economic consequences is a commodity. And I think the reason that the Commodity Futures Modernization Act of 2000, that was passed into law, signed by President Clinton, did that was because it recognized that events pose risks to individuals, small businesses, and large firms in the same way that exposure to physical commodity prices do. And these have been hedged in various, events have been hedged in various capacities for a long time. It's just been through large Wall Street firms, through very complicated products where there isn't a lot of sight into how they operate and a market trading mechanism to create clarity around that. So with the way that this innovation is evolving, there are going to be many new methods for individuals to be able to hedge risks that they otherwise couldn't, because the innovation can be targeted to a specific event and they don't have to use some other generic form of hedging that may not correlate to that risk.
Thank you. Can you discuss the regulatory enforcement clarity between the SEC and the CFTC as it relates to crypto, and what further congressional actions need to be taken?
Thank you, Senator. So as I saw when I was at the CFTC and as I saw after I left, the agencies either share jurisdiction over the crypto spot enforcement markets or markets through enforcement, but really it has been the SEC's decision to make in terms of which products are securities that then they carve out and take into their own jurisdiction. And unfortunately, I believe that there was not any clarity that was offered to the marketplace and to innovators and entrepreneurs to understand how they could build something that complied with the law, or how they could build something that was within the SEC's jurisdiction that was able to follow those rules. So both agencies have had experience in the enforcement area of crypto, but for the CFTC, it has mostly confined itself to fraud, events of fraud, which are standard Ponzi schemes, which isn't necessarily people using cryptocurrency, but it's saying that they're using cryptocurrency for investments and then just stealing people's money. So to the extent that new clarity can be added so that innovators and entrepreneurs can build compliantly, I think is a critical thing for Congress to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Quintenz, welcome to our meeting here, to our hearing. We all understand the critical, let me do this one, actually. You already answered that one. The CFTC's developed a reputation for being tough as a regulator, but also for having a good relationship with market participants and being reasonable to work with on regulatory applications. But some market participants have complained that the Commission has lost its way in processing basic applications for regulatory licenses, which have been taking an inordinate amount of time for approval. What is your view of the CFTC's responsibility in basic application processes, and will you commit to ensuring that the CFTC meets its deadlines in considering such applications?
Thank you, Senator. Let me say it was a delight to spend time with you in your office and to recall visiting Kansas, which I did a number of times. And again, I would pledge to do so again, and appreciate that discussion. The agency needs to meet its mandate, both to the statute and to the markets. And part of its statutory mandate is to ensure that any new applications meet the core principles, but also to ensure for fair competition, which I believe means processing applications in a timely way. And if they meet the obligations of the statute, if there isn't any reason to believe that anything nefarious is going on, as the Commission is evaluating new applications, I believe that it should do so expediently. Not having been at the Commission, I can't speak to what the delays are involving in any applications that are there now, but I would pledge to you and to the market to ensure that if applications meet the standards of the Act and meet the standards for market integrity, the commission will process them expediently.
If you're confirmed, is there a way that you would go in and measure that and determine what's a reasonable amount of time? And when you don't do that, you can report back to us and say, here's why we're failing. Is there a way to measure it, I guess?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I haven't necessarily thought about that, but I think thinking, maybe a little bit off the cuff, I think, one way we could think about that internally is asking the reviewers for applications how long it's taking them to respond with new questions, once the applicant has responded to the previous set of questions to understand how long that delay is. Another is just a conversation with the reviewing team to see what is the status of these applications when they come into the building. Are they robust, or are they very weak? And is there a lot of work that is required? And how many applications are we getting in general? And how are those being sorted?
Okay, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So I hope you figure out a way to measure it. Senator Klobuchar touched on this question I'm going to ask next, and I just want to maybe see if I can understand your answer a little bit more clearly. We all understand the critical role that ag futures markets play in the risk management for our farmers. You mentioned that. You've been to Kansas. It amazes me, pretty small size, relatively sized farmers are now using your services in a good way. But it's my understanding that innovation in digital assets is driving the CFTC to consider new market structures such as 24/7 trading and perpetual future contracts. We have some concerns about that back in ag land, that they raise significant concerns for farmers and other traditional market participants. How do you view the CFTC's role is in both allowing responsible innovation and ensuring traditional market structures are not exposed to potentially harmful changes that could impact ag markets?
Thank you, Senator. First and foremost, I think it is critically important that the agency listen to the end user community in the agriculture industry to ensure that we know very clearly what their preference is for how the products that they use are traded. I think that there is the opportunity for different kinds of innovations to affect different industries at different times. There's no reason that 24/7 trading, if it is allowed for and flourishes in one area, has to translate to other areas. I think that's the case now. I think the agricultural contracts have different trading hours. But again, I would pledge to you to have a very open dialogue with the agricultural industry. I have heard these concerns already from them around expanded trading hours and the possibility of getting liquidated while they're asleep, the possibility of liquidity and concerns, and I take those views seriously.
Great. I remember, I think that the CFTC was set up in many ways to serve agriculture, not necessarily some of the newer Johnny-come-latelys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to start out by talking about futures contracts, events futures contracts. I know this is a space you're well familiar with from your role on the board of directors of Kalshi. I'm proud to represent more than 100 federally recognized tribal nations in California that have the exclusive right to offer gaming in California. And I'm very concerned that these event contracts, which seem pretty indistinguishable, at least from the consumer point of view, violate, indistinguishable from gaming, violate tribal sovereignty, undermine state and tribal gaming compacts, and conflict with the Indian Gaming Regulation Act. Federal law dictates that the tribes, not CFTC, have exclusive rights to police gaming within their territory. If you're confirmed, do you commit to exercise CFTC's statutory and regulatory authority to call these contracts in for review?
Thank you, Senator. So I appreciate the concerns that you've mentioned. I think this is an area of the marketplace that the agency used flexibility that it found in the statute in a way that hampered its growth. I believe that the law is very clear about events that have commercial or financial or economic consequence qualifying as commodities, because the Act recognizes that therefore a viable and valuable futures market can be listed upon them and afford people the opportunity for risk management, price discovery, and price dissemination, which are the three cited national interests for the Commodity Exchange Act in Section 3A. But I would pledge to you, given that this is an area that has, I think, more recently found legislative clarity, given the actions of the agency previously, that I would have a very robust all-stakeholder engagement process around this. I would listen to the concerns of the tribes that you mentioned. Nothing in the CEA that I'm aware of prohibits or affects the opportunity of tribes to offer those products in those markets and those services.
Well, in my view, if betting on the outcome of a sporting event looks like sports betting, looks like gaming, smells like gaming, sounds like gaming, there are winners and losers like gaming, it's probably gaming. And if indeed it is determined that these contracts do amount to prohibited gaming, violating tribal sovereignty and jurisdiction under the IGRA, will you require the contracts to stop?
Thank you, Senator. I need to, should I have the honor of being confirmed, I believe that I need to abide by the Commodity Exchange Act. And if there is a conflict between the Commodity Exchange Act and the other act you mentioned, I believe that's best resolved through Congress. I believe the Commodity Exchange Act is very clear about the purpose of derivatives markets, the purpose of risk management and price discovery, and that events can serve a function in that mandate.
And if the court's determined that, in fact, these are prohibited gaming contracts, will you enforce the law and require the contracts to stop?
I think that depending on the outcome of the court case and where that is in the court system, the agency will follow the appropriate court mandate.
Are you indicating that if the court should rule that there are illegal gaming contracts, that you would appeal because you personally disagree with the rule, or would you recuse yourself having come from a gaming business that would be affected?
No, Senator, I think that I would need to, and I think that the agency would want to ensure that it is appropriately defending the Commodity Exchange Act and the remit that the agency has to regulate and preempt laws, state laws, around futures and derivatives markets.
And finally, you said you would encourage community engagement. There was a commitment to hold a public roundtable, and leaders were ready to fly out to attend it, I think, in February, but it was abruptly canceled. If confirmed, will you commit to holding this public roundtable?
Yes, Senator, I have no information as to why it was canceled, and I'd be happy to reschedule it.
And would you do that before you issue any guidance on this topic?
Since I don't have any plans to issue any guidance in the near term, so I feel comfortable making that commitment.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Quintenz, for your appearance here. I enjoyed our visit in my office, and we talked about a lot of things about Mississippi, and I really appreciate your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
That's a lot, stepping up and having to go through this process right here and many others, so thank you for being willing to do that. I want to talk about something that's already been discussed, the rapid growth with the digital asset sector. And of course, we've seen an entirely new market emerge because of that, bringing its new products, its market participants, and the occasional bad actor at times, all culminating in more significant work for the CFTC. I believe the Commission deserves credit for how it's handled these new responsibilities, and I believe the challenges ahead will only grow with Congress considering legislation that could further expand your jurisdiction as well. How do you plan to ensure the Commission remains focused on its core mission of supporting well-functioning, transparent futures, the markets that producers can rely on for risk management?
Thank you, Senator. It was a delight to visit with you in your office, and again, recollect about my visits to your state in Indianola, and would love the opportunity to head back. Should I have the honor of being confirmed? It's a very important question. The agency's markets, as they exist today, cover $350 trillion worth of hedging transactions and price discovery transactions that affect the real-world economy in areas like that depend on metals, energy, agriculture, different kinds of financial products like interest rates. So there is no room to ignore or to let up on ensuring that the agency meets that critical mission, especially when it comes to our systemic risk mandate. A lot of people, I don't think, appreciate the fact that the CFTC is a systemic risk regulator that oversees what I believe are the most important, systemically important institutions, financial institutions in the world. I would have no tolerance for ignoring those markets, and I would pledge to ensure that the agency's full attention and historic attention is placed there.
Thank you. And over the past few years, we've seen growing public interest in prediction markets. And not just for trading, but as tools for forecasting, academic research, and even policy analysis. At the same time, questions have been raised about where to draw the lines around what types of events are appropriate for public contracts and what falls outside the scope of the CFTC's mission. If confirmed, how do you believe the Commission should approach prediction markets, particularly when it comes to balancing innovation with the need for regulatory clarity and market integrity?
Thank you, Senator. I think the last thing that I would want to do, should I have the honor being confirmed, is to be a value judgment regulator. Try to express my own value judgments on a marketplace and undertake a process that is opaque and inconsistent and likely illegal. And in the past, the agency has taken an approach that I had disagreed with in terms of that adjudicating which kinds of contracts may be acceptable or not. I believe that it is the role for this body and for Congress to decide what is acceptable or appropriate. I think it is the role for the agency to follow the statute. And the statute, as I have said a number of times, is very clear that it is the purpose of the Commodity Exchange Act and the purpose of the CFTC to support derivatives markets that provide for hedging, risk management, price discovery, and price dissemination. So I would try to take a very clear approach that is predictable, repeatable, durable, and legal.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Booker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking forward to, I hope I can get to what is really one of my missions, which is to get a market structure bill here done and talk about the CFTC's role in crypto oversight. But I want to pick up on a line of questioning, which I thought was excellent questioning by my colleague, Senator Schiff. I have a lot of reservations, I have to say, about the explosion in advertising for sports betting, some of the addictive by design tactics employed by the industry. That's ultimately the law of the land. Should you be confirmed, you're going to have a very important role to play in this emerging space. We now know that Kashi, we've been discussing, they're having significant efforts to offer event contracts or sports events, which closely resemble sports betting. Now, Kashi's own advertising, I looked at Instagram, says, quote unquote, sports betting legal in all 50 states on Kashi. And so I just want to talk a little bit about your independence in this space. You said, you gave the following statement while you were a CFTC commissioner. The statutory definition of commodities includes an occurrence, extent of an occurrence, or contingency that is, 1, beyond the control of the relevant parties to the contract, 2, associated with a financial, commercial, or economic consequences, 4, since practically any event has at least a minimal financial, commercial, or economic consequence, all events are commodities. Because of this definition, any contract on the outcome of a future event would be considered a commodity futures contract. And pursuant to the Commodities Exchange Act, is required to be traded on a registered designated contract market. Do you still agree with that statement today?
I do.
Okay, and so help me understand, does that mean it would be illegal for sportsbook or tribal communities to take bets on sports outcome in New Jersey or California or Nevada unless they are registered with CFTC exchanges?
No, Senator. So the quote that you read may have omitted a critical detail, which is if those contracts are traded across state lines.
So, okay, to me, I just, on the face of it, even with the omission that you just speak to, I just feel like it's undermining the clear language of the Commodities Exchange Act, which states that event contracts involving gaming shall not be listed if the CFTC determines that they are contrary to the public interest. Would you agree with that?
So there is a special rule for the review of event contracts, yes, and it does mention specific kinds of events that could trigger
Right,
that
and
review.
you would have a role in this position
Yes, Senator.
on determining this space.
Yes, although I would say, and I have spoken about this, I had a very, very long statement when I was a commissioner previously on this. That provision of the statute troubles me in terms of trying to execute it with repeatability and legality, especially in a post-Loper Bright world, because there is no framework that was provided for by Congress in terms of how to execute that appropriately. What constitutes the public interest? What constitutes an appropriate
And
kind of?
I agree, but you're going to be in this space, and I'm hoping that we can talk more, not in the last 2 minutes that I have, about the role, power, and authority you'll have in this space. And I hope you can appreciate that there will be some real questions into your independence in that role, given the fact that you sat on the board of this. You can understand that there'd be concerns about that, yes?
I can certainly understand it, and I think
And
that's
let me
why.
add, because I'm running out of space, I told you where I want to try to go, but Donald Trump Jr. was hired by Kalshi on January 13th, after his father was elected president of the United States, 9 days before it began offering sports contracts, 1 week, again, before he was, President Trump was inaugurated. And so I'm worried that you're going to be in a position where, if chairman, are you going to feel empowered to prosecute a company or push back on a company that's being advised by the president's son? This deserves some exploration. I want to be able to ask you one last question, but there's a lot more here that has to be discussed, as I'm hearing from a lot of parties that are questioning the independence. And given the culture of corruption that I believe we're seeing in our country right now, where a president has a meme coin that's being invested in by foreign companies, where Americans are justified in wondering the influence that's having on our policy. You're sitting in a position, coming from a company with the president's son. We really have to explore that more, and I'm hoping that the chairman and the ranking member would want to. I very much really want to spend my time working on getting that market structure bill. I really want to talk to you more of it. I am out of time now, but I'm hoping you will be willing to have a conversation, as my subcommittee on this committee really is focused on driving something forward. This is an area that needs regulation. This is an area that needs rules, that we can create a lot more transparency and a lot more trust. And that right now is in this space of digital assets, the space of sports betting, with a lot of things happening in America that have never happened before, with the president so intertwined and his family so intertwined in areas that are seeing extraordinary profits right now. It is very important that we have the objectivity necessary to govern in this space, and I hope we can talk about that more.
I would pledge to have that conversation with you and to have that relationship.
Thank you.
Senator Justice.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and our colleagues. And I want to just say just this. We have the opportunity to nominate a fellow here that is the real deal. I mean, Brian Quintenz is the real deal. And I would just say just this. From the standpoint of our questioning and everything, I wish to goodness that we could some way, somehow, move ahead and leave the politics on the sideline. You know, I truly believe that this is a business guy. This is a farmer. This is a guy that absolutely values the ability that farmers, and I'm one of them, have to be able to hedge our products and to be able to watch what's going on in the grain world, or whether it be the lumber world or the energy world. And that value to us is really important. Now, I've got to say just this too. He knows how to safeguard us from the standpoint of we in Congress first and foremost, but then the CFTC, we need to ensure the bad actors don't become at play, and we have got to some way, somehow prevent manipulation that could really cause us all a problem. Now, let me just say just this. I'm a believer in crypto. I'm a believer in where we're going to go. I believe that it is a future that absolutely provides an opportunity to this nation that is off the chart in all kinds of ways. You know, I don't think we can pass the Genius Act any faster than, I am the most impatient guy in town all the time, and I think we need to get across the finish line right now. But here's my question, sir. I really believe that our chairman is the real McCoy. And I believe absolutely right behind all of that, I believe that from the standpoint of market structure is hanging in the looms. You see, really the crypto world today needs us to stand up and say legitimacy. That's the very first thing that needs to happen. And then right behind that, we need to absolutely be sure, and I always call the voters Toby and Edith, so forgive me, but we need to ensure that absolutely Toby and Edith know that they have access, that absolutely they understand. They come into our world. So with all that, I would say to you, sir, just this. You see, I think the next step forward with market structure is terribly, terribly important. Tell me your feelings.
Thank you, Senator. I completely agree with you. I think as I think about the crypto ecosystem, the crypto market, and the historical role for financial regulation, there are, and as I reflect on kind of a philosophical approach to financial regulation, usually people come down on one side or the other between being pro-innovation or pro-customer protection. There's certainly a very strong middle ground there, but usually, you can think about, favoring one, over the other. In the extreme, a pro-innovation philosophy is a very libertarian philosophy, and it doesn't matter how many people get harmed. And in a pro-customer protection philosophy, it's a precautionary principle approach where you have to prove that nothing bad will ever happen, which means you never have innovation at all. So usually things come down in the middle, and you have to take some kind of choice. I have always viewed market structure legislation as an opportunity to be both pro-customer protection and pro-innovation at the same time, because it can provide the clarity to builders, entrepreneurs, innovators, to develop products that can become networks, that can become decentralized, and that can allow people to own how they participate in those networks, while at the same time ensuring that firms that are central, that are businesses, that service customers and require customer trust are appropriately regulated, which is the hallmark of financial regulation that we've had in this country for decades, if not centuries. So I feel like we can do both at the same time, and I would pledge to you that if the CFTC gets authority, it will be ready.
I would answer bingo. That's all there is to it. Mr. Chairman, I'm a full believer if some way, somehow, we could move forward, because the opportunity is right at our fingertips. If we could move forward with both today, it'd be the right move to do. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Quintenz, is it Quintenz or Quintenz, sir?
Quintenz.
Quintenz, thank you for being with us today, and appreciate your family being here as well. It takes a lot out of your days as well, to travel around with family. And it says a lot that family's with you, in my opinion, sir. Now, as you've heard today, and as you know, Ryan, Congress is grappling with a common issue here. How do we build a regulatory structure around something that's new and technology that's advancing? Now, in this case, specific to cryptocurrency, one of the conversations that I've been a part of is how can we foster American innovation while also protecting consumers? Looking at creating the strongest environment anywhere in the world in America. Now, the committee's done important work to think through some of the hard questions on what a robust regulatory environment would look like. Now, I want to ask about your view on how CFTC would approach this task. Now, as you know, the CFTC is a small agency compared to the SEC. Yes or no, do you believe if the CFTC was given more explicit authority over digital assets, would the agency need more resources, including staff and infrastructure?
Thank you, Senator. I should say yes to that. I think that it is precedential that new jurisdiction comes with new resources. The historical remit of the agency, as I've described many times, is critically important. We can't take our eye off of that ball. And so to the extent that new authorities come to the agency, I think there are ways that we can make every taxpayer dollar spent the most efficient way possible, but I would anticipate that new resources would likely be needed.
I agree with you. Now, if you're confirmed, or I should say when you're confirmed, would you seek more appropriated funds if you needed it to respond to a rapidly growing crypto market?
Thank you, Senator. I would be very transparent with you and your colleagues on this committee about what I felt the needs of the agency were. I think former Chairman Russ Benham did create his own budget request that I think called for a $120 million increase in the first year that then scoped down to $60 million. I don't have any visibility into what went into that, but I would want to review it and either adopt some of it or maybe redo it from a different perspective, but ensure that, again, we would take a technology-first approach to that and we would ask for what we needed.
Appreciate that. Now, anti-money launder regimes, which digital asset companies must have to prevent their platforms from being used for illicit activities. If confirmed, how will you work to oversee digital asset providers' AML regimes now that the United States Department of Justice has deprioritized pursuing regulatory violations like compliance with Bank Secrecy Act violations associated with money laundering and other commodity laws on digital asset companies?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, entities regulated by the CFTC currently, qualify, I believe, as financial institutions and therefore have to have AML KYC programs supervised by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. In the crypto ecosystem, any intermediary or centralized business that has a customer relationship that accepts and transmits customer funds qualifies as a money services business and is also under, FinCEN's remit. And so I would imagine that both of those things, if Congress decided to pass a new, regulatory authority, wouldn't change.
I appreciate that. I'm concerned of this from this announcement from the Department of Justice. There's criminal networks out there involved in human trafficking. Fentanyl is exploding, taking our constituents every day. I believe that if bad folks anywhere in the world want to do something because they're making a dollar, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep laundering money, whatever it may be. And for the United States to take its eye off of money laundering just seems like a big mistake. And so all eyes are going to be on CFTC in this particular space to make sure that we're able to get that right and that we don't let bad people do bad things. Mr. Chairman, I have some other questions in and around sports gambling. The Supreme Court decision a few years ago said that it was states, not the federal government's decision to allow for sports betting. And Many states passed local legislation, things of that nature. New Mexico is one of those that immediately responded. I'll submit those into the record as well to be respectful of my colleagues' time. Really appreciate you being here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Warnock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Congratulations, Mr. Quintenz, on your nomination. Congratulations not only to you, but to your family.
Thank you.
In March, President Trump violated the law by firing the 2 Democratic commissioners at the Federal Trade Commission without cause. Then in April, President Trump ignored the law again and fired the 2 Democratic board members at the National Credit Union Administration, again without cause. These seats remain vacant, and there will soon be more Democratic vacancies at the FDIC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the CFTC. The commission, of course, you've been nominated to chair. Is it correct that you were originally nominated by President Obama?
Yes, Senator, I was nominated twice previously by President Obama and by President Trump.
Right. So a Democratic president initially nominated you to fill a Republican seat on the commission, is that correct?
That's correct.
During your term as a commissioner at the CFTC, can you think of an example of any business before the commission that was improved by having both Democratic and Republican members at the table?
Thank you, Senator. In response to another question, I can only speak to the people and the environment in which I had served previously. I had a very, very strong relationship with my fellow commissioners and both of the chairs under which I served, very cordial. I count them all as dear friends now. A number of occasions we disagreed, but on some occasions we did agree.
Do you think that disagreement is helpful and healthy? Do you think there's some benefit to having a bipartisan board?
I think there can be. I mean, I thought I was right, but you know.
You embody in some ways the trajectory of your work on this commission, nominated by a Democratic president, fill Republican seat. I think Democratic boards play an important role. And I think that the friction in points of view is helpful. Would you agree with that?
Again, I think it can be, Senator, sure.
I'll accept that it can be. I think this is a bad precedent set by President Trump. And I'm worried that it imperils the actual independence of many crucial regulators, including the CFTC. Americans need to know that these agencies work, regardless of who the president is. And I think there's a certain kind of credibility that comes with this kind of bipartisan spirit in the work. The CFTC currently has 3 vacancies. Do you support President Trump nominating a full CFTC, including Democratic commissioners?
Thank you, Senator. The president is the chief executive.
I think it's a pretty simple question. Do
that's-
you support, that's really a yes or no question. Do you support President Trump nominating a full CFTC, including Democratic commissioners?
I would pledge to you to try to emulate the same environment of the commission, should I have the honor be confirmed, that I got to experience when I was there with whoever is serving with me.
I think I asked you a pretty easy question. If confirmed, will you advocate to the White House for the president to nominate and the Senate to confirm both majority and minority commissioners to the CFTC?
Thank you, Senator. With respect, the president is the chief executive, and he can make that decision with the advice and consent of Congress.
Yeah, I understand. He makes a decision. Would you advocate for it?
I don't tell the president what to do, Senator.
If the president continues to ignore precedent and the law and never nominates a Democratic member of the commission, which ignores precedent, it ignores the law, you will be the chair of the CFTC. You'll get confirmed. So how will you as chair work to moderate then the CFTC and incorporate dissenting and minority viewpoints in the commission's decisions?
Thank you, Senator. With respect, I don't want to speak to all the different kinds of hypothetical environments that the commission may experience, but I would pledge that one of the core attributes of the Administrative Procedures Act is to put out any kind of rules and notices for public comment. Responses to public comment need to be incorporated in any kind of final commission action. There is a wide opportunity for dissenting views in the public comment process. I would seek to receive comment from as wide of sources as possible, and I would pledge to work with you and your colleagues to have a very transparent approach to my chairmanship should I have the honor of being confirmed.
Do you think Democrats ever get it right?
I look forward to working with them.
Do Republicans ever get it wrong? Do Republicans ever get it right?
No one has a monopoly on the best ideas, Senator.
Thank you. I think that the erosion of the independence of key regulators like the FTC and the NCUA is alarming. So it's a very serious point I'm really trying to make as we have this conversation. And I hope, you'll hear the spirit with which I'm trying to make these points, because our markets are counting on it, our consumers are counting on it. These agencies protect us from the worst things that could happen. So these political purges, because that's what we're witnessing, these political purges have weakened the regulators and undermined their independence. And I'm worried that the CFTC will follow suit if the important tradition of a bipartisan board goes away. If confirmed, you will have the responsibility, sir, to preserve the bipartisan spirit of moderation at the CFTC, proactively pulling in minority voices, whether or not President Trump follows the law. And so I look forward to holding you accountable for that responsibility if you are confirmed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before I ask my questions, I'd like to add letters of support from various groups for Mr. Quintenz's nomination into the record. Without objection, so ordered. I think you've heard a lot from the committee today in a bipartisan way that we would like to get some sort of a bill passed to regulate the digital commodity, give regulatory authority to the CFTC. As Congress deliberates on granting the CFTC spot digital commodity regulatory authority, what key considerations should Congress weigh? And why do you believe the CFTC is the right regulator for spot digital commodity trading?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the wonderful and the scary thing about this technology is that it is software and it can be anything, which also means that it can evolve. It has new ways of being governed, and under certain kinds of programming and features and governance. The description that I hear from the founder of our fund that echoes with me is that it's and I'll modify this a little bit, it's a globally accessible computer that can make transparent commitments. That is a very powerful thing, which also means that, as crypto assets and blockchain technology evolves and becomes decentralized and allows networks to form, and that governance process to be released outside of the control of an individual person or an entity or a business and be distributed in a transparent way, that poses new and interesting questions from a regulatory perspective, given that networks never just exist. They have to start somewhere, they have to grow, they do have to evolve. And we can't take action that would preclude that from happening, but we also have to be careful when that is happening, that customers are protected. And I think that gets to the point that I was trying to make previously about taking an action by Congress that can be very pro-innovation and pro-customer protection at the same point. And I do believe that if Congress decides to give authority to the CFTC to regulate spot digital commodity markets exclusively with clarity, I think the CFTC is more than up for that mandate and that mission. We have, I think, some of the smartest people in all of government at the agency with some of the best technology in all of government, and as I said, anywhere on the planet. We have 10 years of history in the crypto asset environment, from starting with enforcement cases, but then wonderfully moving to innovation with the listing of the first regulated Bitcoin futures contract in the world. And the insight that that gave the agency over the spot market through its derivatives market mandate, I think is an extraordinary thing.
25 years ago, Congress recognized that self-certification strikes the right balance of allowing the commission to prohibit contracts that violate the law while also fostering liquid and efficient markets and allowing for market innovation. Can you talk about the importance of self-certification?
Thank you, Senator. I believe it was a critical feature of the Commodity Futures Modernization Act of 2000. I think if, theoretically, if you put yourself in the shoes of a regulator, and I've been there, there's not a lot of incentive to improve new products. You bear all the downside risk and you get none of the benefit of the success. So it's natural to focus on all of the risks, and at the extreme, the precautionary principle approach, where you have to prove that nothing bad could ever happen before you allow something to happen, means it will never happen. And that is proved out in the data. In the 70 years before self-certification existed, futures contracts, when the CFTC had to approve new futures contracts, futures exchanges listed about 700 products in total. In the 20 years since self-certification came online through the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, 16,000 new contracts have been listed by exchanges. None of them caused the financial crisis. Many of them were delisted because they didn't develop liquidity, but some of them became critical risk management, liquidity, price discovery markets. And that's what I think the benefit is of the self-certification framework.
Very good. Have you got any other things?
Yeah, just one more I mentioned on the retail customer participation. You're well aware, because you were at the CFTC, that derivative markets have historically been used primarily by large, sophisticated entities, but recently we've seen increased participation by smaller retail customers, especially the events contracts and digital asset derivative markets. What, if anything, do you think the CFTC should do in response to the increasing retail participation? And do you think that the agency needs to do more to address risks in this area?
Thank you, Senator. I think it depends on whether or not there's direct access or whether or not there's intermediation. There are strong customer protections across both models. All contracts traded by exchanges have to abide by the 23 core principles, including things like fair and orderly markets, surveillance, not readily susceptible to manipulation, conflicts of interest, et cetera, that provide markets with integrity. But there's an extra layer of customer protection when they are intermediated by the FCM community that have to do disclosures associated with potential loss and education and outreach. And there are even some exchanges that do go direct to market participants that have those same customer protections listed in their licenses. So those are certainly models that we can look at, but I take your point, and I would pledge to have an open dialogue with you around those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One very last final thing, and then we'll be through with this, but can you talk about the importance of principles-based regulation, and specifically how it helps foster innovation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mentioned this briefly in my written testimony, my opening statement. I'm a strong believer in the benefit of principles-based regulation for a few reasons. The first is that I believe it allows responsible innovation and allows the marketplace to evolve, to try new things, to be held to a standard of best practices, which do continue to evolve on their own. It prevents a one-size-fits-all regime that locks in a technology approach or a standard approach. But in order for it to be done compliantly and responsibly, there has to be a strong dialogue between the regulator and the marketplace to ensure that the regulator understands the different approaches that are out there. And I think that that is a very valuable exchange of information. But we don't need to look any further than how wonderful these markets are, to understand the importance of principles-based regulation. The CFTC oversees the most resilient and the most liquid and the most innovative derivative markets in the world, and in my belief, it is because of the principles-based framework in the CEA.
Go ahead.
No, thank you. That's been it. I'm done.
I thought we had one more final. Okay. Well, thank you again, Mr. Quintenz, for appearing before the committee. Want to thank the members for their participation today, and as always, for our staffs for making all of this happen. The record will remain open for 2 business days, and with that, the hearing's adjourned.